Hi there, this is Diecast channel, and in this video I'm going to do a review on this 1971 Mercury Comet. This is made in 1:24 scale by Motor Max. It has a pretty good quality as a budget model, so stay with me to the end of this video because we're going to do a review on this car, and don't forget to subscribe in case you haven't subscribed yet. Give me a thumbs up to share this video and click the bell for news. So let's take a better look at this car right now. And here we have the Mercury Comet. This is basically a Ford Maverick with some upgraded trim. What's the difference between the Ford and Maverick and the Mercury Comet? Besides the front and the rear, we had this trim that used to go all the way on the side from front to rear. There was a chrome trim and some extra trims, badges, and emblems. But it would be a smarted up Maverick with the same engines and the same options of transmissions, with just some different Mercury details. One day I was downtown going on some used books place, and I found those Motor Trend new cars for 72 and new cars for 73. 73 is the year I was born. But the first book I bought was New Cars for 73. And what we find in New Cars for 72, right here on page 5, is 1971 Mercury Comet. That's that very model I've shown, but this one is a 4-door, that one is a 2-door. But it hasn't changed for 1972. Going to New Cars 73, we find on page 4 the Mercury Comet for 1973. There's a 1972 model. That's the model I've shown, but this one has got a vinyl roof. That one ain't got. And the 1973 model with the reinforced bumpers. I actually like the 1972 better. I think it looks more charming with those thinner bumpers than those thicker bumpers. I really don't mind those thicker bumpers for Cougar, for instance. The Mercury Cougar XR7 for 73, I think it looks much better than the 1972 ones. But in the case of the Ford Maverick and the Mercury Comet, I like the 1972 better. Same thing for the Ford Maverick. 1972 Ford Maverick, 1973 Ford Maverick with the reinforced bumpers. Speaking of those 1:66 models I've shown before, this is the Audi 100 GL that looks like that 100 LS I've shown in a 1:66 scale in a previous video. This is the same 1973 cars, Motor Trend magazine, and the Mercury Capri I've talked about, Volkswagen K70, and that's the car, that's the real thing, and on that magazine, New Cars for 1972 by Motor Trend. That's the car sideways, and a picture that really drew my attention is the luggage. You can see suitcases you can carry on the trunk of that car. That would be a compact car for the time. 1:24 cars are pretty affordable. You can get for a pretty good price, and they're not very difficult to find. So if you want a Ford Maverick, if you want a Mercury Comet, but you don't want a 1:64 car because you think it's a little bit too tiny, you can take the 1:24. 1:24 would be a pretty honest option for model cars. And if you collect model kits, you can also find Mercury Comets. You can find this Mercury Comet to go with those model kits you put together. So it would be a model option for those model cars you have in that scale. So it's an interesting option. And a pretty good tip for those who want to collect model cars but don't intend to spend much, or sometimes can't afford to spend too much on more expensive models. It's basically an upgraded Maverick, I would say. This car is equipped with a 6-in-line engine that came from the Ford Falcon, although the Mercury buyers could also choose the 302 V8, a small block, which is one of the best engines produced by Ford, and it's still used nowadays. So this is a very honest model made by Motor Max in the 1:24 scale. So we're going to take a better look at its details right now. The front of a Mercury with this new design for the hood, grille, and bumper, I've seen a car just like that in that movie Full Play, in which Chevy Chase was going to the opera to save the Pope from being murdered. And he was driving a Mercury Marquis, and he went one of the streets the wrong way, and one of those Mercury Comets collided with a 1963 or 64 Cadillac that was parked. I don't remember exactly the year of that Cadillac, but I remember the Mercury. It could be a 1971 or 72. I remember because it was a thin bumper instead of a thick bumper. Rear, that's well made. It's a very well made mash with those turning lights and the headlights that are quite realistic. We've got some picks in here, but it's okay. It can really be mistaken for the light bulbs. It's not a big deal, really. It's not an issue. Now, the front panel is pretty well made with a radiator and the engine bay that's got the straight six engine and one piece of plastic with an air filter as a separate piece. The engine bay in general is pretty well made, and the hood is well made with a trim as a separate piece and a badge that's cast in metal and painted on. A closer look at the engine bay, we can see the engine, cables, wires, exhaust manifold, the air filter, the battery, the front panel with the radiator, and all details there are in the engine bay. Those diagonal reinforcements, those two braces we have in the Mustangs and Ford Maverick and Mercury Comet as well. We cannot say those are poorly made, actually. They are very well made for a cheaper budget model, really. So they are pretty honest. Door shuts correctly. The mirror is in a good proportion. And a good thing, as you open the door, this opens with the door. The interior of the Mercury Comet, that's pretty much like the Maverick interior. Steering wheel, a gear lever, and I can see only a tiny simulation of the pedals and a dashboard that's quite simple. But even though this model is quite simple, I wouldn't say it's poorly made, really. I would say it's pretty good quality for a budget model, really. So, can it be improved? Of course it can, really. If you don't have enough money for a more expensive model, if you cannot find a Mercury Comet in a different scale or in a different brand, and you want to have this car in your collection, but you would like some further details, and you can always take this car apart and work a little bit in the interior and make it a little bit better. Looking from the other side, pretty good interior. It's not a bad one, it's not an excellent one, but it's honest, really. It's according to model car standard. This could be a pretty good choice. At least the only one I know nowadays besides model kits. Two pairs of tail lights, trapezoids actually. There's a gas cap and a trunk lock and a trim around the trunk lid, pretty much like the Mustang. Maverick would be sort of a cheaper Mustang, and the Mercury Comet a little more sophisticated Ford Maverick. This base here, although it's simple, it's much better than the base we find in those 1-18 models made by Greenlight, Artisan, and Best of Show, for instance. And those models are much more expensive than this one made at 1/24 scale. Even though this car is simple, it's got steerable front wheels, which is very nice. It's got the drive shaft, the rear suspension, the front suspension. This is not really a big issue considering this is a budget model. This is because of a plastic base. When this car comes in a box, it was not the case of this one, but it can also be removed and worked on if you want to go further in details and make this car look a little bit better. Still, it's a very nice, decent, and honest model. Now, given this car is great from 0 to 10, I would give it a 9. I think it deserves a 9 since it's a budget model. It's not really aiming at being a very sophisticated car, a very sophisticated model car such as a Franklin Mint, for instance. It's just a Motor Max, which is a cheaper model, but it's not necessarily cheaply made. I would say it's got a pretty acceptable quality for its price. So I'd like to thank you for all likes and views, for all subscriptions. Please don't forget to subscribe in case you haven't subscribed yet. And also, let me know down in the comments what you think about the video and about the car. And let me know also if you have any further information on the Mercury Comet or even the Maverick. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.